I think one has to be very careful about the story of Albanian smugglers, people traffickers, which has come out today in the newspapers and on the BBC. This is a story that could easily have come out a few days ago. It was about the arrest of 7 Albanian traffickers between the 3rd and the 5th of October in Spain. Now, this was a hit done by the NCA, the National Crime Agency, working with with the police, with officers in Spain, and the leader of that agency, Graham Hancock, says that organised criminal people smuggling is constantly evolving. Another person, Steve Reynolds, says that people smugglers put lives at danger. Both of these points are absolutely true. And what's interesting is looking at the details of this story. The details of this story are that people were paying between nearly £3,000 to £13,000 to be smuggled from Spain to various ports in the UK, Portsmouth, Southend, Liverpool, hiding in the back of lorries, tractors, and so on. And there was a very clear Albanian crime syndicate operating in Bilbao and in Santander. And this has now been broken up. And this is quite a long way from the stories that Suella Braverman has been putting out about Albanians dominating the 35,500 odd migrants who have crossed the Channel this year so far. I dispute her claim. And if there are routes which can be which have been set up by the illegal smugglers going from Spain through to recognised ports in the UK, then I think it's highly unlikely that Albanians are taking so many crossings across the Channel. Added to which, there are also routes through Dublin. So I go back to the point that I made earlier in a previous post, that many of those 35,000 people crossing the Channel are probably legitimate refugees, migrants, desperate for survival and turning to us for hope. So it would be deeply and morally repugnant for us, A, to brand these people as all Albanian, and B, to brand them all as fake. We can only turn people away. We can only say that people are not authentic migrants, authentic asylum seekers, should their paperwork prove to be tawdry, dodgy, wrong. We can only do that if the Home Office processes that paperwork. At the moment, there's a backlog going back to 2007 because we don't have enough people in the Home Office to do this work. And meanwhile, we have a Home Office minister who is repeating the same sort of parroting the same sort of propaganda and rhetoric that her predecessor, the person who was accused of bullying, was already doing. We don't need a parrot in the Home Office. What we need is somebody who is going to get the work done. If we want to discourage people from coming to this country, then we have 2 jobs to do. Number 1, we have to process the paperwork that we have undertaken to do. And number 2, if we really think that people should not be applying to Britain for asylum, then we have to renegotiate the 1951 Refugee Convention that we are signatories to. If we don't like something, then we have to challenge it at base. We cannot run around the place making our own new laws and new regulations and overturning agreements that we are signatories to. If we do that, then we become internationally corrupt. We become part of the problem rather than part of the solution. If we think honestly that there are too many migrants coming to our country, then we must deal with this at base. We must tackle the 1951 Refugee Convention. We must redefine what a refugee is. We must redefine how we respond to their request. And we must deal with this honestly rather than dishonestly. We must deal with this with facts rather than stupid rhetoric and, quote, propaganda. We cannot accuse another nation, let's say Russia, of pumping out propaganda if we are doing much the same in the mouth of Suella Braverman. If Suella Braverman wishes to become a fountain of propaganda and a fountain of misinformation, then as far as I'm concerned, she should do it in another country, because I don't recognise that as British. I don't recognise that as something that is mine. That gives me a choice. Either I need to do everything I can to silence her, or I need to go to another country. I'm quite happy to do both. But I'm so ashamed of the Conservative Party, which indeed I have stood for office in the Conservative Party, so I have good reason to be ashamed of this institution. And I would dare to say that a lot of its present invective comes from UKIP, which I took pains to penetrate to find out whether or not that itself was racist. It is, it was, and it's wrong. I don't think racism is part of our national character. And I don't think treating people who appeal to us for help with contempt is part of our national character. I do think, however, that it is right for us to reconsider who comes to our country and who lives among us, and whether and how they embrace our values. These are valid questions, but we need to deal with them by looking at the core issue. The core issue, I think, lies in those conventions that we have signed up to. If we are not prepared to convene an international discussion, to chair an international discussion, and to abide by an international agreement, then this debate is going nowhere. This debate is just mouthing slogans to titillate a few very, very nasty, warped individuals. But mouthing slogans seems to be what this government likes to do. We need to go beyond mouthing slogans. We need to turn slogans into practice, or they're just words. And if they're nasty slogans, they need to be words that we would rather forget. So, we have a lot of work to do. And I salute the officers of the NCA who have broken up a pernicious gang. It's worth also noting there was a very interesting interview with a gang leader, with a people smuggler, a while ago, who was based in Istanbul. We don't know his or her nationality. We do know that before smugglers take the money from their victims, they get the victims to sign a piece of paper saying that they are not responsible for what happens to them, and that going on this particular journey could lead to their death. Now, I also happen to know a good deal about the stress and the pressures on people who are fleeing from their home country. I know a good deal about it. I've looked into it. I have met so many refugees who have fled their country for one reason or another. Believe me, I understand this problem, and I understand the pressures that people face and the risks that they are prepared to take. And Suella Braverman, in her arrogance and contempt when she says that this particular country, that particular country is a safe country and no one should have to flee from it, there are many reasons why people flee. And I find it extraordinary that a minister of the Crown should be putting forward such arrogant, contemptuous and baseless statements. We need to have better ministers than this. We need to have ministers who listen. And if our Prime Minister says that she's listening, then the people who are working under her should also be listening. Sadly, I don't really believe the Prime Minister. I'd love to know what you think.